Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai. We believe at GST that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. Today, I have an incredible guest, the Chief Executive Officer of Calveri, Stefan Albert Johnston. He's invented a wide range of biochemical technology and discoveries, including nucleic acid vaccines as used in COVID, pathogen-derived resistant chloroplast and mitochondria transformation, cloning Gal4 protein functional domains, and peptide arrays, synbodies, linear expression elements, a lot. The key is he is going after cancer today, ladies and gentlemen, and focus on developing RNA-generated frameshift neoantigens in the vaccines to treat or even prevent, you heard it right, prevent cancer, and diagnostics to detect cancer at stage 1 or earlier. So with that, I'd like to bring Stefan on board. Hi, Stefan. How are you today?
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me on board.
So I wanted to go down through, take us back to the aha moment, which sparked your conviction that cancer could be ended with vaccines rather than treated with chemotherapy or radiation.
Okay, yeah. No, that's interesting. It was a long time ago, I'm ashamed to say. But as an inventor, we just look for areas that it looked like you needed and had an invention in, and cancer looked pretty, stymied. So we were looking for inventions. So I thought that the best thing to do, just from first principles, would be a vaccine that you could prevent cancer from happening in the first place. And so the aha moment was that, I found as an inventor, you really want to focus on the juggler experiment as soon as possible to figure out you're on the dance floor or not. And so we did that. A postdoc with me did this experiment in mice where we took a element from one tumor and vaccinated for a different tumor type, and it worked. And that was the moment. We knew we were onto something at that point.
So, but you're not just an inventor; you're a doctor, right? You got 2 PhDs.
Yeah. It doesn't help me that much.
Yeah, well, that's great because you go down through it, and myself with my dog passing and my wife with cancer today. I mean, I understand it's a problem that we've got to solve because there's a lot of money that's been spent at throwing it, not really treating it and stopping it, but just prolonging it. So I love what you're doing. So I went down through a lot of the literature, by the way. And I found some different quotes and the things that you've said. So from dogs to humans, Calveri's first mission to end cancer in dogs, then in humans. Why start with canines? And what are the translational lessons you expect to carry over to people?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. I thought you might ask that, so I sort of, chewing on it. I think it comes back to this idea of what's called the Overton principle. Is that if you look at a particular area, and you want people to move forward in it, you can't do it by creating a big vision all at once. Usually, it's too much for them to handle. So you have to take them just a little bit outside where their comfort zone is, and keep progressing them till they finally get to the vision, right? So our vision was, let's eradicate cancer. Well, that's a lot to swallow. And particularly in humans. So what we decided to do is, in keeping with the Overton principle, okay, well, let's do something that people find acceptable. Let's discover cancer early, and let's not even do it in people. Let's do it in dogs first, so that nobody feels at risk. There's not a lot of technologies or products out there that are at risk for this. And then once you have that working, then take it to the next step in dogs, do a therapeutic vaccine that's off the shelf. And then once you get it to a preventative vaccine, the president of Merck comes in and his dog is getting a preventative vaccine. And he might wonder, why isn't he getting a preventative vaccine? So that was sort
Well,
of
I mean, that's, there's a guy named Mark Mamula. Do you know him from Yale?
no.
So you should, when I did my research for my dog's vaccine, Mamula is actually doing a lot of work at Yale, and he's doing a
Oh
vaccine.
yeah, now I do remember this. Yeah, but that's a therapeutic vaccine. Yeah.
So, yeah, another question, in the peptide chip early detection, your semiconductor-based peptide chip can detect cancer at stage 1, Stefan, or even earlier. How does the chip work, and what makes it more sensitive than liquid biopsy or imaging approaches?
Okay, so in the diagnostic field, there is an interest in detecting stage 1. So there's Grail out there, Exact Sciences, all these things. Even on the dog side, there was PetDx, which was sort of the Grail of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all failed pretty much because what they're doing is that they're trying to detect nucleic acids that a tumor releases into the blood. Well, it turns out when their tumors are small, especially certain types of tumors like breast cancer and others, when they're small, they're releasing minuscule amounts of DNA into the blood. So it's really difficult for them to discover that. And we took a fundamentally different approach to this. We said, look, when your tumor first starts, your immune system sees it right away. It sees it as if it's an infection. And it starts generating some antibodies to it, just like it does when you first get infected. And then we thought, well, a B cell sees a tumor and it's making all these antibodies. It amplifies that signal 10 to the 11th fold in 1 week. All we need to do is to be able to detect those antibodies, which are still rare, but detect those, and we can pick up a tumor early. There was no technology to do that, to pick up that level of antibodies in that complexity. So what we decided to do is take all the possible errors that a tumor could make and basically synthesize them on a silicon chip. And then, they look like this. We took basically the same wafers as Intel uses, but we synthesized chips with 2 million peptides on there. And so that technology didn't exist. So we figured out how to do that. And then it made it simple. All we have to do is take a drop of blood, put it on one of those chips, see whether it binds to the signature of a cancer or not. That's it.
Most people, Stefan, think of cancer vaccines as therapeutic. You're aiming for an off-the-shelf preventative shot. What scientific hurdles have to fall before routine cancer vaccines become abnormal as a flu vaccine?
So as a preventative vaccine,
right?
I mean, yeah. Okay, so we've already done a trial in dogs where we vaccinated 400 dogs with a real vaccine and 400 dogs with a mock vaccine, and then look at these dogs were all screened first, so they didn't have cancer as far as we could tell. And then we monitored them for 5 years, every 6 months, to see what was the incidence of cancer. And in the dogs that were vaccinated, there was a 40% reduction in the incidence of cancer. So the possibility of preventing cancer is real. It's
why don't humans have that then? I mean, I think everybody out there, like the HPV, I remember my daughter had an HPV vaccine many years ago, right?
Yeah.
And why don't we have that? Because is it the pharmaceutical companies are pushing against it because they're not going to make enough money, or why?
Okay, so here's when we proposed this to the people particularly in the human cancer field. Why not do this? Because as a matter of fact, we have all the components. We could design a vaccine for humans that I'm pretty confident would substantially reduce the incidence of cancer. Not positive, but fairly confident it would. Why not test it, right? You'd think. And especially since every drug that they test and do costs about $2.2 billion to test every drug through phase 3. And only 30% of those get into the market. And most of them have, relatively mild effects on late stage cancer. So you think if that's the state of the art, you think you'd want to take a chance on something that might substantially change it.
Right.
So there's the objections that come up. The first one was it can't be done, but then we did the dog study and we showed that it could be done. Then it was, well, we're concerned about autoimmunity. We'd be vaccinating all these people, maybe they have a bad side effect. We have seen no evidence of safety issues. I took the vaccine myself before I gave it to any dog to make sure it was safe. I bark, but other than that, there's no side effects. And so, but the third issue is just apathy.
It's not the barking; it's if you're starting to like liver treats.
Or chase cars or something. Yeah.
I saw you doing one of these things. I was trying to figure out what it was about. With your foot.
I can't do that. So anyway, I think it's just apathy, and it's a hard question. I'm not sure how to answer it, but if we've gone to Merck and these other, they just ignore us, and I can sort of see why. You're the CEO of a big company. You're making $29 billion a year off a drug that you spent years developing to treat cancer at late stage. And someone comes, why don't you look into developing a product that obliterates that market?
Well, that's it. I mean, that concerns me a lot, by the way, right? Because I thought, I met with the guy who was a top executive a few years ago of insurance companies. And he said, it's interesting. Our thing is to just keep people alive, not to go down through and cure it, right? And it was interesting because that's like a subscription model, and it's insane, right? So
it is, and in fact, that's one of the current views in cancer is that we just treat it like a chronic disease. We will treat you with this drug for a few years, and then if it comes back, we'll have a new drug, and we'll treat you with that one. And yeah, I mean, and that's an improvement, but boy, it doesn't seem very desirable.
So you recently launched the Canine, was a sarcoma vaccine. What early signals you're watching for? What milestones must this trial hit before you scatter broader canine cancers or a first-in-human study?
Yeah, this is a cancer trial that's ongoing. It's a therapeutic trial. So a dog comes in, they have hemangiosarcoma, which is very rare in people, less than 1% occurrence in people, but it's very prominent in prominent dog. Like if you have a golden retriever, this is one of the higher risk cancers for your dog. So we launched this, but it's like the pancreatic cancer of dogs. If you get it, it goes fast, you die quickly. So we launched this trial to see if our vaccine could protect. It's an off-the-shelf vaccine. They all get the same vaccine to see if we could at least extend their lives, if maybe even cure them of this hemangiosarcoma. By the way, this was sponsored by a very generous individual that loves golden retrievers that wanted to conduct this trial.
I think that Mark did the same thing based on his dog, right? That's why he started to work on this. So diagnostics and vaccines live in different regulatory universes, Stefan. How are you navigating FDA, USDA oversight for the peptide chip, the therapeutic vaccine, eventually a prophylactic vaccine?
Yeah, so that's a big question. One fortunate thing, our first product will be a diagnostic for the early detection of cancer in dogs. And part of the reason for that, in terms of commercial terms, is that there is no regulatory issues for dog diagnostics. Unlike for human diagnostics, they have to go through the FDA. So that gives us a clear path to commercialize this product, which is a potentially $5 billion a year market in the U.S. People don't realize there's about 90 million well-kept dogs in the United States. And
listen, I'm one of those persons. I love my dog. I'm crazy about my dog. I understand.
We'll give you a free diagnostic.
What's that?
We'll give you a free diagnostic.
No, I'm ready for that. You've got peptides array plus vaccine formulation sound complex. What does the manufacturing stack look like, and how do you keep costs low enough for global adoption, even in low resource settings?
Yeah, this has always been important to us. And just a little aside, from the beginning, we line up. You know this, your background. Yeah, we line up specs. What does this product have to meet to? And one of the ones of the specs we had was low cost because we wanted this to be a global product right from the beginning for people. Originally we started just looking at people. We only went to dogs because we couldn't get any traction in people. But so we've always been very conscious of what the cost of the vaccine would be and what the cost of the diagnostic would be. And part of the reason of going to this chip-like technology is that the cost scales inversely with the volume, right? So as the bigger the volume we can get of these, the lower the cost that chip will be. And so we're pretty confident that this chip can be made at costs that will allow us to take it worldwide.
With 60 plus patents, you clearly believe in IP, yet Calveri's mission is profoundly humanitarian. How do you balance protecting inventions with the need for widespread affordable access?
So I'm a firm believer in the inventive, patenting process. I think it's very good. I should say that we don't patent this technology because it's all protected by trade secrets, not by patents itself. But I'm a firm believer in that, and I think that you have to have the patents, or you're not going to get the investments in order to make the product. That's just the way the world works, and which has worked pretty effectively up till now. So I don't see any real impediment of having patent these things with producing a product that could be used worldwide. I don't see that. Maybe it's naive, but I don't see it.
You've invented the gene gun and pioneered early gene vaccines, tech that paved the way for today's mRNA shots. I love it. I love it.
It's a 12 shooter.
It's like Star Trek. So what hard-earned lessons from those decades are shaping Calveri's roadmap?
That's a good question. One thing I've learned that is not to trust people that supposedly are the experts. We've had several products that we've developed where marketing guys came in or supposedly the expert in the field, and they said, you definitely should do this. And it turned out it was a bad mistake. I think there's a tendency to believe, for me as an inventor in the business world, that these guys really know what they're doing. And I found out from experience a lot of times they don't, which is ironic because as an inventor, I go into an area and I say, let me go into a new area where I'm stupid. I don't know anything, but I'm going to look at this field with different eyes. I didn't apply that early on to the business side of the world where, you should think for yourself.
Well, 90% of building a unicorn is not the product, it's the story, right? And being able to tell the story, as we've talked about a lot of times, it's critically important. And most of the time people don't get it right. That's why they fail. So fast forward 5 years, what does a routine annual cancer screen look like for a healthy 40-year-old? Walk us through the patient journey.
Yeah, I think this part is quite attainable within 5 years. Mm-hmm. That you walk into your annual checkup, there's a small amount of blood applied to a universal diagnostic chip. It will not only just pick up cancer, it will pick up Alzheimer's, early incidences of diabetes, things like this. It will pick it up at a very early stage so that you can get new kinds of therapeutics that are designed just for early stage treatments. That, I think, can be done in 5 years.
Ending cancer is a moonshot. Well, Mars shot today.
Yeah.
Right? We've extended it. What metrics? And I think we need to go further, probably Pluto or something now with the friend Elon going to be saying he's going to land somebody in Mars.
Yeah, right.
So, what metrics, scientific, clinical, and commercial, will tell you Calveri has truly moved the needle toward that goal?
For me personally, if this therapeutic vaccine in dogs, or we are actually working up a clinical trial for people, a therapeutic vaccine for people. If those work, then I'm almost sure the preventative vaccine will work, because it's much harder to do a therapeutic vaccine than a preventative vaccine, it turns out. Because you're fighting an uphill battle with the therapeutic vaccine. If it can work there, it's easy on the preventative side.
You've led invention centers at Duke, UT Southwestern, ASU, spun out multiple companies, now helm Calveri. What keeps you motivated, and what advice would you give young scientists, entrepreneurs tackling big and possible problems?
Well, for me, it was having kids. You want to, you want to make the world really a better place for them and have them feel like you contributed to that. And I guess that's been my primary motive.
So this is my lightning round. So these are 30-second answers. Biggest myth about cancer vaccines?
That they have to be expensive.
Most underappreciated dog breed in clinical research?
Probably into longevity right now.
A tool you can't live without in the lab?
A coffee pot.
I love that. One scientist, living or dead, you'd love to collaborate with?
Oh, that's interesting. I would love to collaborate with Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, it's I spent a lot of time on that myself, and harmonic resonance, and interesting from some ultra high net worth families that invested in some of that stuff, and it's quite interesting, actually. No, I agree with you. The only thing I don't like the part where he was kissing the pigeons.
I don't want to go early Tesla. Let's say.
Really, yeah, the boat, the remote control boat. Okay, finish the sentence. In 2035, cancer will be
a memory.
Excellent. So we're coming up to the end of the show. Closing thoughts for all those investors out there, for the entrepreneurs out there, and then how do people get a hold of you?
Okay. I often get a question about entrepreneurs and stuff. The one thing I don't hear as much about is stress test whatever you think your technology is quickly and often, because the world's changing, and if it's not the best, get rid of it, right? And that's my advice there. For investors, my advice is invest in us.
There you go.
There you go. And what was the third?
You want to make the world a better place, invest. And, the other thing is sometimes we don't understand the power of artificial intelligence, the things that I work on. People don't get how much it's going to change everything. And when we take that and things like quantum computers and start to really work on it, like multi-agent large language models, it's going to change the way things are done. And we're going to be able to iterate faster than we ever have before.
I'm sure that, we're already employing this in our chip design and things like this. The one thing finally is that I don't think people should be satisfied with the status of the cancer field right now. It's just, there's no reason for us to be living through this. And there's no reason 70% of the cancer occurs in the developing world. There's no reason that they should have to suffer what they do with cancer right now.
No, I agree. And how do people get a hold of you, Stefan?
You can just email me at stefan.johnston@calveri.com.
I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time of your busy schedule to join us.
Oh, it's fun, Gary, as always.
And thanks to all my audience for joining one more time. GSD Presents, Silicon Valley AI and Tech. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again next week with another exciting edition. Thank you, and thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.